My name is Pearl, and at 57, I've learned that being a good mother doesn't always mean saying yes. After 30 years as an ER nurse and raising my daughter Amanda alone, I thought I'd seen it all. Then my phone rang. My only child had gotten married without telling me yet wanted the keys to my cherished Maine beach house for her honeymoon. What happened next changed our relationship forever. My response wasn't what she expected, but sometimes love requires making difficult choices. Before I tell you this story, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against family. I never planned on being a single mother. Life has its own plans sometimes. When my husband Michael died of a sudden heart attack when Amanda was just 5 years old, my entire world collapsed and rebuilt itself around one purpose: giving my daughter the best life possible. As an ER nurse, I worked brutal hours. Double shifts, overnight rotations, holidays, weekends. I took them all. The extra pay meant I could put money aside for Amanda's college fund. I still remember her tiny hand clutching my scrubs as I'd leave for night shifts, her eyes wide with tears as she asked, "Do you have to go, Mummy?" It broke my heart every time, but I'd kiss her forehead and promise to be there when she woke up. I missed school plays, parent-teacher conferences, and soccer games. My sister Diane would fill in when she could, taking photos, so I could see Amanda's princess costume or her science project ribbon after my shift. It wasn't perfect, but we managed. Every spare penny went into a college fund jar that sat on our kitchen counter. Despite the challenges, Amanda and I had our special traditions. Every summer, no matter how tight money was, I'd take a week off and we'd rent a tiny cabin near a public beach in Maine. Those precious 7 days were sacred to us. We'd build sandcastles, collect seashells, and stay up late playing board games when it rained. Amanda would fall asleep to the sound of waves, and I'd watch her peaceful face, knowing all the sacrifices were worth it. When my Aunt Eliza passed away 10 years ago, she left me her small beach cottage in Maine. It wasn't fancy, just a weathered 2-bedroom place with faded blue shutters and creaky floors. But it was on a stunning stretch of private beach. Amanda was in college by then, but I still remember her excitement when I called to tell her, "Mum, that's our beach, the one where I found the heart-shaped rock," she had squealed through the phone. The cottage needed work, but over the next few years, I spent every vacation and long weekend fixing it up. I learned to replace rotting deck boards, paint weatherproof siding, and even rewire light fixtures from YouTube tutorials. My hands weren't as smooth as they once were, but the calluses were badges of pride. That house represented everything I'd worked for. The change in Amanda happened gradually. During her sophomore year of college, her calls became less frequent. When we did speak, she'd talk about her new friends, kids from wealthy families with vacation homes and European summer trips. I noticed how she'd quickly change the subject when her roommate would walk in during our calls, as if embarrassed to be caught talking to me. By her senior year, Amanda had met Jackson Wright, the son of a prominent real estate developer. The first time she brought him home for Thanksgiving, I noticed how he looked around our modest 3-bedroom ranch with barely concealed disdain. Amanda kept apologizing for the small TV for the outdated kitchen for my work stories. I'd never seen her apologize for our life before. "Your mum's quite folksy," I overheard Jackson say to her when they thought I was busy in the kitchen. Amanda had laughed nervously and whispered something I couldn't hear. They left right after dessert, skipping our tradition of watching holiday movies together. After graduation, Amanda moved to Boston, where Jackson's family had connections. She landed a marketing job at a prestigious firm, a position that never seemed to require her to submit a resume. She called less and less, and her visits became rare. When she did come home, she spent most of the time on her phone making comments about how I should update the house or change my outdated wardrobe. "Mum, no one wears floral patterns anymore," she said during her last visit. eyeing my favorite shirt with distaste. "And why don't you paint these walls grey? This yellow is so old-fashioned." I kept trying. I'd send care packages to her apartment, drive 3 hours to have lunch with her when she claimed she was too busy to visit me. I learned how to text and use Instagram just to stay connected to her life. But with each passing year, I felt more like an obligation than a mother. When Amanda did visit the beach house, she'd bring friends and barely include me in their activities. Once I overheard her telling someone on the phone, "No, it's not that impressive, but it's right on the water, and it's free." Free. As if all those years of work, all those replaced pipes and hand-sanded floors meant nothing. As if I meant nothing. But she was my daughter, my only family besides my sister. So I smiled through the hurt and kept trying, believing that eventually she would remember the bond we once shared. The first real disappointment came when I learned about Amanda's engagement through Facebook. I was scrolling through my feed on my lunch break when I saw a photo of her hand with a massive diamond ring captioned, "I said yes, #future Mrs. Right." 67 people had congratulated her before I even knew my daughter was engaged. My hands shook as I dialed her number, excitement and hurt battling inside me. "Amanda, sweetheart, I just saw the news." "Congratulations," I said when she answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, thanks. Yeah, Jackson proposed last night. We're thinking spring wedding, probably at his parents' estate." Her voice was casual, as if discussing weekend plans rather than the biggest commitment of her life. "That's wonderful. I'd love to help with planning. I could come up to Boston next weekend, and we could look at venues or dresses," I offered, already mentally calculating how much I could contribute from my retirement savings. There was a pause. "Mom, the Wrights have it handled. Jackson's mother knows everyone in the industry. She's already contacted 3 wedding planners." "Well, I'd still like to contribute. I've been saving for your wedding since you were little," I said, thinking of the special account I'd been adding to since Amanda was 10. "That's really not necessary," she replied quickly. "Jackson's parents are covering everything. It's going to be quite upscale, but thanks for the offer." I swallowed my disappointment. "At least let me help with your dress. Every mother dreams of helping her daughter find her wedding dress." Actually, Mrs. Wright has already scheduled appointments at some exclusive boutiques. Designer stuff, you know, but maybe you could come to one of the fittings later on. Her voice had that forced brightness I'd come to recognize when she was trying to let me down, gently. In the months that followed, I tried to stay involved. I offered to address invitations, arrange flowers, or handle any task that would make me feel part of this milestone. Each suggestion was politely declined. I reached out to Jackson's mother, thinking perhaps we could bond over planning our children's big day. I left 3 voicemails before receiving a brief text. "So nice to hear from you. Everything's under control, but we'll be in touch if we need anything." I never received another call. 6 months passed with minimal updates. Then, scrolling through Instagram one evening, I discovered photos of Amanda's bridal shower, an elegant affair at a rooftop venue in Boston. There she was, my daughter, opening gifts, surrounded by women I'd never met, with Jackson's mother sitting proudly beside her, where I should have been. I spent that night crying into my pillow, feeling like a stranger to my own child. But the next morning I got up and started working on a wedding gift, a handmade quilt featuring squares from Amanda's baby clothes dance recital costumes and her high school graduation gown. If I couldn't be part of her celebration, I could at least give her something meaningful, something that represented our history together. Desperate for information about the wedding, I contacted Lisa, Amanda's childhood best friend. We'd always been close. I'd been like a second mother to her after her own passed away from cancer when the girls were in high school. "I'm sorry, Pearl, but I haven't been invited either," Lisa admitted, sounding hurt herself. "We had coffee a few months ago, and Amanda mentioned the wedding was going to be intimate with just their current circle. I guess 20 years of friendship doesn't qualify as current." I reached out to more of Amanda's old friends, discovering that none of them had received invitations. Not even Jessica, who'd been Amanda's roommate all through college before Jackson came into the picture. It seemed my daughter wasn't just distancing herself from me, but from her entire past. Still, I held on to hope. Perhaps the wedding truly was going to be a small family affair. Maybe Amanda was just caught up in the right family's grand plans and expectations. I told myself that when the actual wedding approached, she'd remember who had been there for her all along. She'd want her mother by her side on the most important day of her life. So I waited for an invitation that never came. Checking the mail every day with diminishing hope, I kept the quilt wrapped in tissue paper ready to give to my daughter when she finally included me in her joy. After 3 months without hearing any concrete details about a date or venue, I finally gathered my courage and called Amanda. My heart was pounding as the phone rang, rehearsing what to say, how to ask, without sounding accusatory or hurt. It was a Tuesday evening in April, and I'd just finished watering my garden, a peaceful activity that usually calmed my nerves. "Hey, Mom," she answered, sounding distracted. I could hear voices and music in the background. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "I was just wondering if you've set a date for the wedding yet. I'd like to request time off work well in advance." There was a pause, then muffled sounds like she was covering the phone to speak to someone else. When she returned, her voice had changed, becoming cooler, more distant. "We already got married, Mum. We only invited people who really matter." The world seemed to stop. I gripped the kitchen counter, certain I'd misheard. "What?" I whispered. It was 2 weeks ago at the Wright estate. Just a small ceremony. The background noise had quieted, like she'd moved to a different room. "Small ceremony," I repeated, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Yes, Mum. Look while I have you. We're planning our honeymoon and wanted to use the beach house next month. Can you send the keys? We'll need them by next Friday." I couldn't process what was happening. My only child had gotten married without me. I hadn't seen her walk down the aisle, hadn't helped her prepare, hadn't witnessed her say her vows. I hadn't even known it was happening. "You got married without telling me," I finally managed to say, tears forming in my eyes. She sighed loudly, the kind of exasperated sound she used to make as a teenager when I asked about her homework. "Just send the beach house keys and stop being so dramatic. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. My daughter's wedding, not a big deal. My exclusion from the most significant day of her life, not a big deal. I just smiled and hung up. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up entirely and a strange buzzing filled my ears. I sank down onto my kitchen floor, still holding my phone, and let the tears come. They weren't just tears of sadness, but of shock and disbelief. This couldn't be my Amanda, my little girl who once cried because she thought she'd hurt my feelings by preferring her aunt's spaghetti to mine. That night, I pulled out old photo albums. There was tiny Amanda in my arms at the hospital, red-faced and perfect. Amanda on her first day of kindergarten, clutching my hand so tightly. Amanda and me on the beach building an elaborate sand castle with moats and towers. When had that loving child turned into someone who could dismiss me so cruelly I didn't sleep? How could I? My mind kept replaying her words, people who really matter. The implication was clear. I didn't matter. After all the sacrifices, all the love, all the years of putting her first, I didn't matter enough to witness her marriage. By morning, my eyes were swollen and my heart felt hollow. I called my sister Diane, the only person who would truly understand. She did what? Diane's outrage was immediate. "Pearl, that's beyond hurtful. That's cruel. Maybe I should just send the keys," I said, exhaustion making my voice flat. "What's the point of fighting? The point is that you're her mother, not a hotel concierge," Diane snapped. "You don't deserve this treatment, and honestly, enabling it only hurts you both in the long run." I spent the day oscillating between grief and anger, between wanting to call Amanda back to express my hurt, and wanting to never speak to her again. The mother in me wanted to forgive everything. The woman in me demanded better treatment. I didn't know which voice to listen to. The emotional spiral continued the next day when I made the mistake of checking social media. Amanda had finally posted wedding photos, and they told a very different story than just a small ceremony. The wedding had been a lavish affair at the Wrights' sprawling estate. Massive floral arrangements, a champagne fountain string quartet, ice sculptures. No expense had been spared, and the guest list was far from small. Photo after photo showed crowded tables and a packed dance floor. I recognised Amanda's current co-workers, Jackson's business associates, even people I knew were just casual acquaintances from their social media interactions. In one photo, Jackson's parents stood on either side of the couple, beaming with pride, the position that should have been shared with me. Mrs. Wright was wearing an elegant silver gown, her arm linked with Amanda's, as if she were the mother of the bride. My chest physically hurt looking at those images. There must have been over 150 people there, people who really mattered. The housekeeper from Jackson's childhood home mattered. Amanda's gym instructor mattered. Jackson's third cousin, twice removed, mattered, but I didn't. I was in the kitchen staring at these photos on my tablet when my coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the tile floor. The hot liquid splashed my ankles, but I barely felt it. The physical pain was nothing compared to the realization that my daughter had not only excluded me, but had lied about it being a small, intimate ceremony. When the phone rang and Amanda's name appeared on the screen, I almost didn't answer. But some maternal instinct, some hope that perhaps she was calling to apologize, made me pick up. "Mum, did you send the keys yet? We need to make arrangements for the beach house." No hello, no acknowledgement of our previous conversation, just a demand for keys. "Amanda, I saw the wedding photos," I said quietly. "It looked beautiful." A pause. "Oh, yeah, the Wrights know how to throw a party. You told me it was a small ceremony. There were at least 100 people there," she sighed. "Mom, it wasn't a big deal. Can we not make this about you for once? We're trying to plan our honeymoon." Not make this about me. I had never made anything about me. My entire life had been about her. "I saw Mrs. Reynolds in the pictures," I said, referring to their old housekeeper, "and your cycling instructor, and people you've only known for a year. Look, we had to invite the Wrights connections. It was important for Jackson's career." Her voice had that dismissive tone that had become increasingly common. "The keys, Mum. Can you express mail them?" I heard muffled conversation, then a male voice came on the line. "Jackson." "Pearl, hi. Listen, we really need to lock in our honeymoon plans. Amanda said you might be having some feelings about the wedding, but we'd appreciate if you could just send the keys. We only have that week free with both our work schedules." His tone wasn't even trying to hide his impatience, as if my hurt feelings were an inconvenient roadblock to their plans. "Did you know I wasn't invited to your wedding, Jackson?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Another pause. "Well, Amanda handled the invitations. I assumed you'd declined since her father wasn't there either." A blatant lie. My ex-husband had been dead for over 20 years, as Jackson well knew. "I think you both know I was never invited," I said. "I think you know that would have been the most important day of my life." "Pearl," he said, with the condescending tone one might use with a difficult child. "What's done is done. We're talking about the future now, our honeymoon. If you're not comfortable with us using the beach house, just say so. We can make other arrangements, though. Amanda will be disappointed." The manipulation was so transparent. Make me the bad guy if I didn't hand over my property. Make me responsible for disappointing my daughter when she had just delivered one of the most painful disappointments imaginable to me. It was in that moment that I realized the truth to them. I wasn't Amanda's beloved mother. I wasn't even a person with feelings deserving of consideration. I was merely a resource. someone who owned a free vacation house they wanted to use. That night, I couldn't sleep again, but for different reasons. My mind was racing, reviewing not just the wedding exclusion, but years of similar incidents that I'd excused or overlooked. There was Amanda's college graduation, where I'd driven 5 hours, only to discover she'd only secured me a seat in the very back row, too far to even see her walk across the stage. When I asked why, she'd said, the front rows were for people with connections to the university mum, as if I hadn't paid a significant portion of her tuition. Then there was her promotion party 2 years ago. I'd taken a day off work and driven to Boston, bringing a special cake I'd stayed up late making. At the event, Amanda had introduced me to her colleagues as Pearl, a family friend, not even acknowledging me as her mother. Later, when I asked about it, she'd said, "It's just easier, Mum. Some of these people have parents who are CEOs and board members. I didn't want to have to explain, I didn't know. I didn't know when my occupation as a nurse, saving lives, caring for the sick and injured, had become something shameful. I didn't know when my sacrifices had become something to hide. Sitting on my couch at 3 a.m. scrolling through photos of my beach house on my phone, something finally broke inside me. Not just my heart, but the illusion that things would eventually improve if I just loved Amanda enough. The painful truth was that my unconditional acceptance had only enabled her increasing disregard for my feelings. I looked at a picture of the beach house at sunset, the wooden deck I'd sanded and stained myself, the flower boxes I'd built and painted. This house wasn't just property. It represented years of hard work, both in saving for Amanda's future and in creating a place where I'd hoped we would make new memories together. Memories that would never exist if I continued on this path. For the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge that loving my daughter didn't mean accepting mistreatment, that being a good mother might sometimes mean standing firm rather than giving in, that teaching Amanda about consequences might be the most loving thing I could do now. The next morning, my phone rang again, but this time it wasn't Amanda. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, is this Pearl Fletcher?" a polished female voice asked. "Yes, speaking. This is Evelyn Wright, Jackson's mother." Her tone was friendly but businesslike. "I hope I'm not calling too early." I was so surprised that I couldn't immediately respond. In the 2 years Amanda and Jackson had been together, Evelyn had never once reached out to me. "Amanda mentioned you might have some concerns about them using your beach property for their honeymoon," she continued when I didn't speak. "I wanted to assure you that they'll take excellent care of the place. The Wrights always respect property values." The condescension in her voice was unmistakable, as if I was worried about them breaking something rather than hurt by being excluded from their wedding. "That wasn't my concern, Mrs. Wright," I said carefully. "Oh, please call me Evelyn," she said with practiced charm. "We're family now, aren't we? Even if we didn't get a chance to meet at the wedding. It was all so rushed, you understand." Rushed. According to the Instagram photos, they'd been planning for at least 6 months. "I understood it was quite an elaborate event," I said. "Over 150 guests, I believe." A slight pause. "Well, yes, there were certain business connections that needed to be maintained. I'm sure Amanda explained. She didn't, actually. She told me it was a small ceremony with only people who really mattered." Another pause, longer this time. "Well, I'm sure she didn't mean anything by that. You know how stressful weddings can be." Her voice had cooled several degrees. "Regardless about the beach house, they really have their hearts set on it. Jackson said it's quite rustic, but perfectly positioned for the Instagram backdrop they want. Water views are getting thousands of likes these days. Instagram backdrop. That's what my labor of love had been reduced to." "I wasn't aware they were considering other options," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Oh well, contingencies are always wise," Evelyn replied. "Though Amanda assures us it won't be necessary. She said you've always given her whatever she wants." The way she said it made it sound like a character flaw rather than motherly generosity. Did she mention that I'm her mother? Because when Jackson called yesterday, he seemed to think I was the housekeeper. I could almost hear Evelyn's spine stiffen through the phone. I'm sure that was a misunderstanding. It wasn't, I said, surprising myself with my directness. Amanda has been misrepresenting our relationship for some time. I'm sure you didn't know that the rustic beach house you're dismissing was renovated with my own hands after working 40 years as an ER nurse, saving lives while raising Amanda alone. Silence. I'll need to consider what I want to do with the property this summer, I said. I'll let Amanda know my decision. Thank you for calling Evelyn. I hung up before she could respond, my heart pounding, but my mind clearer than it had been in years. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up for myself against someone trying to diminish me. It felt terrifying and liberating all at once. Over the next few days, I did a lot of thinking and a lot of talking with my therapist, Dr. Lewis. I'd started seeing her 6 months earlier, concerned about my empty nest feelings, never imagining we'd be discussing this level of family crisis. What matters most to you in this situation, Pearl? She asked during our emergency phone session. I want Amanda to understand that she hurt me, I said immediately, then paused. No, that's not quite right. I want her to respect me, not just as her mother, but as a person. And what would that respect look like? I thought about it. Acknowledgement, appreciation, consideration of my feelings, not treating me like a resource to be used when convenient. Those are all reasonable expectations in any relationship, Dr. Lewis affirmed. The question now is, what boundaries do you need to set to teach Amanda that this is how you expect to be treated? Boundaries. The word itself was somewhat foreign to me. As a single mother, I'd spent decades without boundaries. Working any shift offered sacrificing sleep and personal time, making myself endlessly available for Amanda's needs. The concept of saying no to my daughter felt almost physically painful. I'm not talking about punishment, Dr. Lewis clarified, sensing my hesitation. Boundaries are about self-respect and teaching others how to treat you. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our children, even adult children, is to show them that relationships require mutual care and consideration. After our call, I sat on my deck, watching the waves, contemplating what a healthy boundary would look like in this situation. Giving Amanda the beach house keys after being excluded from her wedding would send the message that I accepted such treatment. Refusing angrily would create more conflict without addressing the underlying issue. I needed a response that was neither doormat nor vengeful, something that preserved my dignity while still leaving the door open for healing. The idea came to me while looking through my community centre's newsletter. There was a small article about a local charity that arranged vacations for families with terminally ill children, giving them precious memories in their difficult journeys. I'd donated to them occasionally, but never been actively involved. I called their office that afternoon and spoke with the director, Maria. We're always looking for vacation properties, she explained. Most of these families can't afford getaways, especially with medical bills, but these memories become invaluable, particularly for the siblings who often get overlooked during treatment. By the end of our conversation, I had committed to letting the organisation use my beach house for 2 weeks that summer, including the week Amanda and Jackson had requested. The family they had in mind had an 8-year-old daughter named Lily, who was battling an aggressive form of leukemia. Her parents had been sleeping in hospital chairs for months, and her younger brother had been shuttled between relatives while they focused on Lily's treatment. A week at the beach would mean everything to them, Maria told me, her voice thick with emotion. Lily loves the ocean, but has never been able to stay overnight near one. That evening, I started preparing a special welcome package for Lily and her family. Beach toys, local restaurant gift cards, a collection of books and games for rainy days. With each item I added to the basket, my heart felt a little lighter. The next day, I wrote a letter to Amanda. Not an angry letter, though I had every right to be angry. Not a self-pitying letter, though I had certainly been hurt. Instead, I wrote from a place of truth and newly discovered strength. Dear Amanda, I've given a lot of thought to your request to use the beach house for your honeymoon. I want you to know that your decision to exclude me from your wedding was deeply painful, not just because I missed seeing my only child get married, but because it revealed how little you value our relationship. The beach house has been offered to a family with a daughter fighting leukemia for the week you requested. Their need for precious family memories before an uncertain future outweighed your desire for Instagram backdrops. I've included a photo album with this letter. Inside are pictures of us throughout your childhood, times when I worked double shifts to provide for you moments we shared on the beach that would later become the site of my cottage, the graduation where I sat in the back row but cheered the loudest. I hope these photos remind you of who we once were to each other. I will always love you, Amanda, but love without respect isn't healthy for either of us. When you're ready to build a relationship based on mutual care and consideration, I'll be here. Until then, I need to value myself enough to set boundaries. Your mother always, Pearl. Along with the letter and photo album, I included a certificate showing the donation of the beach house time to Lily's family, with a photo of the little girl smiling despite having lost her hair to chemotherapy. I drove to Amanda and Jackson's townhouse the next morning. It was in an exclusive neighborhood with manicured lawns and luxury cars in every driveway, further evidence that they weren't lacking in resources or comfort. I left the package at their door, rang the bell, and walked away. This wasn't about confrontation. It was about taking a stand for my own worth. I was gardening when Amanda called 2 days later. "What is this?" she demanded without preamble. Her voice was tight with anger. "You gave away the beach house to strangers." I set down my trowel and took a deep breath. "Hello, Amanda." "Mom, I don't have time for pleasantries. Jackson has already requested the time off. His parents were planning to join us for the weekend." "How could you do this?" "Did you read my letter?" I asked calmly. "Yes, I read your guilt trip letter," she snapped, "and saw the manipulative photos of some sick kid. What was that supposed to accomplish?" Her callousness shocked me. This wasn't just entitlement. It was a profound lack of empathy that I hadn't raised her to have. "That sick kid is named Lily," I said, keeping my voice steady. "She's 8 years old and may not see her 9th birthday. Her family hasn't had a vacation in 3 years because of hospital bills and treatment schedules. So now I have to compete with cancer patients for my mother's attention." Amanda's voice cracked slightly, showing the first hint of real emotion beyond anger. "This isn't a competition, Amanda. It's about choices and consequences. You chose to exclude me from one of the most important days of your life, then expected to use my property without acknowledging how deeply you hurt me. It was our wedding. We had the right to invite whoever we wanted." "Yes, you did." I agreed, "and I have the right to decide who uses my home. That's how adult relationships work, with mutual respect and consideration. So you're punishing me." "No, I'm setting a boundary." "There's a difference." I was surprised by how calm I felt, how certain of the rightness of my decision. "I spent years putting your needs first, Amanda. I worked extra shifts to pay for your dance lessons. I went without new clothes so you could have the prom dress you wanted. I supported you in every way I could. And in return, you've treated me like an embarrassment, someone to hide away and only contact when you need something." The line was silent for so long I thought she might have hung up. "I didn't invite you because I knew you wouldn't fit in," she finally said, her voice smaller. "The rights are different from us, Mum. Their world it's not like ours. And you were ashamed of me," I said, naming the truth we'd both been dancing around for years. Another long pause. "I didn't want to feel like I had to explain you." The honesty hurt, but it was also oddly freeing. At least we were finally acknowledging reality. "Amanda, I've never been ashamed of who I am or what I do. I saved lives as a nurse. I raised you alone after your father died. I built a good life for us with my own 2 hands. If you're ashamed of that, it says more about you than about me." "So what now?" she asked, sounding suddenly exhausted. "You've made your point with this charity stunt. Are we supposed to just not have a honeymoon? I'm sure you'll figure something out. Jackson's parents have connections, don't they? Isn't that what really matters?" I hadn't meant it to sound bitter, but perhaps some residual hurt slipped through. "Fine," Amanda said flatly. "Enjoy your moral high ground, Mum." After she hung up, I sat in my garden for a long time, listening to the birds and feeling the warm sun on my face. There was sadness, yes, but also a strange sense of peace. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had advocated for my own worth instead of sacrificing it for someone else's convenience. 2 weeks later, I received a text from Amanda, the first contact since our call. It was just a screenshot of an Instagram post from the charity showing Lily and her family on my beach house deck, all of them smiling widely, the ocean sparkling behind them. The caption read, "A week of precious memories, thanks to a generous donor." Lily's first time building a sandcastle and falling asleep to ocean waves. Amanda had added no comment of her own, but the fact that she'd sent it at all felt significant. Perhaps seeing the joy on that family's faces had penetrated her anger, allowed her to see beyond her own disappointment to the greater good that had come from my decision. I didn't respond immediately. This wasn't about scoring points or forcing reconciliation. True healing would require time and genuine reflection on both our parts. Instead, I focused on healing myself. I joined a community garden group, made new friends, took a pottery class I'd always been curious about. I travelled to the Grand Canyon, a trip I'd postponed for years, always finding reasons why Amanda's needs should come first. For the first time in decades, I began to discover who Pearl was beyond being Amanda's mother. The holidays were awkward that first year. Amanda and Jackson came for a brief Christmas visit, 2 hours of strained conversation and careful politeness. But they came, and Amanda noticed the pottery bowl I'd made, commenting that it was actually pretty good. A small compliment, but sincere. Spring came, and with it, an unexpected phone call. "Mum," Amanda's voice sounded different, hesitant, almost shy. "I've been doing some thinking. Actually, I've been seeing someone. A therapist, I mean." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, genuinely pleased. "Therapy has been very helpful for me too." "Yeah, that's partly why I started. I saw how you've been changing, becoming more, I don't know, centered. Anyway, I've been talking about us about the wedding and everything, and I need to tell you something." I held my breath, not daring to hope. "I'm sorry, Mum. I was awful to you. Not just about the wedding, but for years. I got so caught up in trying to fit into Jackson's world that I forgot to be grateful for everything you did to get me there. I was wrong, and I hurt you, and I'm truly sorry." Tears filled my eyes. "Thank you for saying that, Amanda. It means a lot to me. I miss you," she admitted. "The real you, not the version of you I tried to mold to fit my new life. And I miss who I used to be with you." "I miss that too," I said softly. "Could we maybe start over? Maybe dinner next weekend, just us. I'd like that very much." It wasn't an instant fix. Rebuilding our relationship took time and effort from both of us. There were difficult conversations, moments of backsliding, occasional tears, but there was also honesty we'd never had before. I established clear requirements for our renewed relationship: respect for my choices, acknowledgement of my contributions, consideration of my feelings before requests were made. And to my surprise, Amanda accepted these boundaries, even seemed relieved by their clarity. 6 months after our reconciliation began, Amanda brought Jackson to dinner at my home. A real dinner, not a rushed obligation visit. He seemed different, more genuine, or perhaps I was seeing him clearly for the first time. "I want to apologize to you, Pearl," he said during dessert, looking me directly in the eyes. "I encouraged Amanda's worst instincts about status and appearances. My family, we have money, but we've always lacked the kind of authentic connection you and Amanda once had. I was jealous of that, even while pretending to dismiss it." I hadn't expected such self-awareness from him. "Thank you for saying that, Jackson. The beach house," he continued, "I'd like to see it properly someday. Not for Instagram or to impress anyone, just to understand this place that means so much to both of you." The beach house had become a regular donation to the charity during the summer months. The joy it brought to families facing unimaginable challenges gave it a purpose far beyond my occasional use or Amanda's social media aspirations. "Actually," Amanda said, smiling tentatively at both of us, "I was thinking maybe we could all volunteer for the charity next summer, help prepare the house between families, maybe create some special welcome packages." The suggestion touched me deeply. "I think that's a wonderful idea." Last month we did just that, Amanda Jackson and I working together to make the beach house special for a family whose 10-year-old son was in remission but still fragile. Amanda's marketing skills created beautiful welcome materials, while Jackson used his connections to secure donations from local businesses. I watched them interact with the family when they arrived, saw the genuine compassion in my daughter's eyes, and felt a profound sense of pride. Not just in her professional accomplishments or social status, but in the human being she was becoming. That evening, sitting on the deck watching the sunset, with my daughter beside me, I reflected on the painful journey that had brought us here. Sometimes love means standing firm rather than giving in. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the example of valuing ourselves enough to require respect, and sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most beautiful outcomes. What would you have done in my situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? Please like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself can be an act of love. Thank you for listening, and remember, true family relationships are built on mutual respect, not just blood.